The Celtics were able to stave off a Brooklyn Nets comeback, and Boston secured the Game 1 victory on a Jayson Tatum buzzer beater. We're going to get into more details of this game and what the Celtics did right, but first I want us to take a look at the final possession by Boston because it really gives us a glimpse into how far the Celtics have come over the past few years. So Jaylen Brown is going to drive towards the middle, and he slings it over to Marcus Smart. Now, on the old version of the Celtics, Marcus Smart might have immediately pulled the catch-and-shoot shot, but instead he pump fakes and gets both Bruce Brown and Claxton to bite, and it allows him to take some space. Now, again, Smart kind of gets open, and he honestly could pull the shot if he wanted to, but if you look closer, you can see that Kevin Durant is basically completely unaware of what's going on around him, and Tatum makes a perfect cut for Smart to find him. Jayson Tatum somehow has the awareness to hit Kyrie with a spin move, and he gets a really clear look at the basket, and it results in a Game 1 victory for Boston. The fact that Marcus Smart passed not one but two wide open looks to win the game, the fact that Tatum wasn't isoing to try and hit a contested game winner, the fact that he made a really smart cut away from the ball to get a good look, and the fact that they burned the clock down to the very last second hunting for a good shot. In my opinion, this is a perfect illustration of just how far the Celtics team has come over the past few years. Even with the Nets comeback towards the end of the game with Kyrie Irving hitting some of the most ridiculous shots I've ever seen, the Celtics managed to hold on, and in this video, I'm going to go over why the Celtics are not only capable of beating the Nets in round 1, but they even have the capability of winning it all. As always, be sure to subscribe if you enjoy this video. Let's get right into it. Now, first thing that we need to talk about is just how important Al Horford was to their success in Game 1. With Robert Williams out right now, they needed Horford to play an even bigger role on defense than he already did, going as far as taking on the Kevin Durant matchup at times and doing a great job at staying in front of him and making him really uncomfortable, holding him to only 3 of 7 shooting when guarded by Horford. His work on the glass was incredibly important for them as well, contributing 15 rebounds to their total of 43 rebounds. The Nets only grabbed 29 rebounds over the course of the entire game, and Horford was paramount in shutting down Brooklyn's possessions and initiating their transition offense. Now, let me remind you about something. Al Horford is 35 years old. To be that old and still contributing in an area of the game that is so physically demanding just isn't normal. Yet Al Horford showed in Game 1 why he's so important to them. Now, on the subject of defense, we got to talk about how fantastic Marcus Smart was on defense in this game. I know there's a lot of controversy right now surrounding whether or not Marcus Smart deserved to win Defensive Player of the Year, but I encourage you to watch his defensive performance in this game, and you may see why people voted for him. His defense on Kyrie Irving was really good, especially in a game where Kyrie Irving was on fire for most of the night. The name of Kyrie Irving's game is creating space through his incredibly deep arsenal of dribble moves and counters, but what made Marcus Smart so effective on him is how he eliminated that space and made it as difficult as possible for Kyrie to perform these moves without running a significant risk of turning the ball over. Collectively, their defense was about as good as we knew it was. They really shut down Brooklyn on the interior and made them rely almost entirely on perimeter creation. The issue with that is that Boston also has really good perimeter defense on top of being able to shut down shots in the paint. So even with reliable perimeter creators and shooters, Boston was able to match them and really stall their offense and force them into some really bad shots. Tatum looked stellar as a point of attack defender, and he was making KD's life really miserable when he was guarding him, going as far as blocking one of Kevin Durant's jump shots. He did the same to Kyrie as well, and these are guys who we know can get whatever shot they want. Kevin Durant is typically able to shoot over just about anybody. Tatum being able to guard such quick and crafty guys and stay in front of them while also having the ability to block their jumpers is kind of a terrifying thought. Jaylen Brown had some nice defensive possessions as well, showing some great effort and even getting some nice chase down blocks, even when he got beat or was forced behind his matchup. He was just being an unbelievably frustrating defensive pest against Brooklyn, and he made everything difficult for them. And although he didn't necessarily shoot the ball particularly efficiently from beyond the arc, I still think that he's going to be liable to pop off for 25 plus points on any given night on really good efficiency. So that's going to be a factor as this postseason progresses. And then I also can't talk about their defense without shouting out Grant Williams. He was giving maximum effort, and he made some really strong plays plays against Kevin Durant, and he's one of the most prominent factors in why the Celtics were able to force Kevin Durant into such a rough shooting night. But perhaps one of the biggest factors in their ability to take down the Nets in Game 1 was the playmaking masterclass that we got from Jayson Tatum. Tatum has taken a lot of strides as a primary facilitator, and I think we're finally starting to see what he's capable of on a big stage when given the opportunity to facilitate the offense. I mean, just look at this pass. He's isoing and facing up in the corner, and in the past, I wouldn't have been shocked to see Tatum use that sidestep shot that he loves to go to and put up a contested look. But instead, he slings the ball to the far side, and he connects perfectly with Williams, who's able to drive to the basket for a dunk. He was passing up open shots to make the extra pass, which was awesome to see because the defense oftentimes was assuming that he was going to take the shot, and so he would catch them off guard by making the extra pass for an even better look. I like this play here because he's going to get doubled by KD and Drummond, the two biggest guys on the court, and Horford is left in the paint with a mismatch of Seth Curry and Kyrie, and Tatum recognizes this, so he's just going to feed it to Horford, who gets the easy bucket. He had some really nice transition passes as well, so they were able to really push the pace against Brooklyn, who has one of the worst transition defenses in the entire league, so they were really capitalizing on that mismatch. Tatum showed that he was capable of recognizing their weaknesses and that he could use his ability to score the basketball to his advantage to create open looks for his teammates. Now, on the subject of playmaking, Marcus Smart was really good as a facilitator in Game 1. If he continues to pass like he did, the amount of options that Boston has as far as who they want to run the offense through is going to be really difficult for opposing teams to game plan for. He did a good job of getting Tatum going, as you'll see here. He passes to Tatum and then immediately sets a screen on KD, allowing Tatum to get into an easy three off of the screen. What he did in this game is more than just passing, it's playmaking, which I think there's a pretty big difference that people don't talk about enough. He wasn't just passing the ball with intention, he was also screening and actively working to create a look for his teammates even when he didn't have the ball in his hands. Now, on the scoring side of things, this matchup is going to work in the Celtics' favor really well. The Nets kind of lack both a strong interior defense and a strong perimeter defense. They have good defenders like Nicholas Claxton and even Bruce Brown, but the problem is that they're relying on Nicholas Claxton to work as a perimeter defender most of the time, being pulled out of the paint, which is going to leave a glaring gap in the paint that Boston is going to be able to exploit. Boston scored 56 points in the paint in Game 1. That's nearly half of all of their points in that game. The Celtics are not reliant on perimeter scoring in order to compete, which is a really good sign not just for this series, but going forward into the rest of the playoffs. Shooting variance is always going to play a factor in a team's ability to win games in the postseason, so the more that you can minimize the reliance on perimeter shooting, the better you can mitigate the impact that a bad shooting night might have on your team. If the shots aren't falling, you can go to that interior offensive game plan where you're attacking the basket. They're really taking advantage of the Nets' lack of a strong interior presence, and it's creating chaos for Brooklyn with their reliable interior defenders having to be pulled out to the perimeter more often than not. Now, will Kevin Durant shoot as poorly as he did in Game 1? Probably not. Will Kyrie continue averaging 35 plus points per game on over 80% true shooting? Maybe he will. That seems unlikely to me, but we'll see. The point of the matter is that Brooklyn is relying entirely on these two to do everything for them. And without much else for Boston to have to worry about outside of those two players, it's easy to talk yourself into the idea that Boston is going to be able to move on to round 2 when it's all said and done. Now, the really crazy part is that they're doing all of this without Robert Williams, a guy who was arguably top 3 to 5 in Defensive Player of the Year conversations before he went down with an injury. Imagine if you had Robert Williams on the court in Game 1. He would have turned an already bad shooting night by Kevin Durant into an even worse one. Their ability to score on the interior would have been nearly non-existent with him anchoring their defense. Let's hypothetically say that Ben Simmons is back for Game 3. What does that do to Boston's ability to beat them in 7? Think about it. Ben Simmons is an interior scoring threat at best, and he's non-existent in terms of scoring anywhere 5 feet away from the basket. Would the presence of Ben Simmons make life more difficult for Boston? Sure, but it's not an addition for Brooklyn that would put them over the top in terms of talent, and the blueprint for Boston would remain largely similar to what it is now. They have a much deeper lineup, they have a much more well-rounded team, and they're not as top-heavy and reliant on their stars as Brooklyn is. Plus, with a coach like Ime Udoka, I'd imagine he's already cooking up some scheme for if and when Ben Simmons enters this series. You take all this into account, the fact that Boston is without a top 3 to 5 defender in the entire NBA, their ceiling isn't just getting past the first round. Their ceiling starts to look more and more like a finals appearance and maybe even going as far as winning it all. With their offense looking rejuvenated and firing on all cylinders, Tatum taking that superstar leap both offensively and defensively, and their defense being a nightmare to go up against, they have the ability to go pretty much as far as they want to, and they are built perfectly for a deep playoff run. So do you think that the Celtics are going to make it out of the East? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. As always, if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It's free and it helps me out a ton. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.